Okay, so we're diving into the world of AI code editors today, and specifically we're going to be talking about Cursor.
Cursor, yeah.
It's been generating a lot of buzz lately, and for good reason, right? I mean, you and I both have been following AI's impact on coding for a while now, and this feels like a pretty big deal.
It really does. I mean, every day there's a new AI tool popping up, but Cursor, this feels different.
Right, like it's not just another incremental step.
Like it's trying to reinvent the whole process.
Exactly. So we've been digging into what makes Cursor different, and we found some pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that struck me is how deeply integrated the AI is. It's not just, like you were saying, an editor with some AI features tacked on.
It's like AI from the ground up, right?
Yeah. Exactly. It's built with this AI at its core, which allows it to do some really next-level things.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those things. One of the key features is this whole code base understanding idea. What does that even mean? Can you break that down for me?
So imagine a typical code editor,
Right.
right? It might have some autocomplete, maybe some basic syntax highlighting, but it's basically treating your code like a bunch of text.
Right.
Cursor, on the other hand, it actually analyzes and understands your entire code base. It sees the relationships between different functions, variables, everything. It's like it's reading your code and understanding what you're trying to build, not just what you're typing.
Okay, so it's not just about suggesting the next word in a variable name. It's understanding the logic behind it.
Exactly. And this leads to some pretty wild capabilities. Like one of the things that blew me away was this predictive editing thing.
Predictive editing, yeah. That's the thing that sounds like, honestly, it's right out of science fiction, right? Like, what is that?
Right. So you know how some editors have that autocomplete where it tries to guess what you're typing? This is like that, but on steroids. Cursor actually tries to predict your next edit, not just the next word.
No way.
Yeah, it analyzes your coding patterns and how you structure your code, and it tries to anticipate what you're going to do next. And I got to say, from what I've seen, it's surprisingly accurate.
Wow. So it's like it learns how you think, how you code, and it can actually almost finish your thoughts for you, essentially.
Exactly. And developers are saying that this actually makes them faster, more efficient coders because it removes a lot of the mental overhead of constantly having to think about the mechanics of typing.
It's like it gets out of your way so you can focus on the actual problem solving.
Exactly.
That's amazing. Okay, we got to talk about this natural language editing thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is the thing. This is the one that everybody's talking about, and it does sound pretty revolutionary. So you're telling me that I can basically write code in plain English.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to throw away your grammar books just yet.
Oh.
But the idea is that you can give Cursor instructions in natural language, and it'll generate the code for you. So let's say you wanted to create a function that sorts a list of names alphabetically. Instead of writing out all the code manually, you could just tell Cursor, hey, create a function to alphabetize this list, and boom, it would just do it.
That's insane.
It's wild. And what's really cool is that it's not just about generating boilerplate code. Cursor can actually understand the context of what you're doing and generate more complex code snippets, even entire functions, based on your natural language descriptions.
So for someone like me who's still learning, I imagine that would be like having a coding tutor right there in the editor with you.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most exciting aspects of this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
It has the potential to make coding so much more accessible to people who might have been intimidated by the traditional way of learning.
Totally. It's
Yeah.
like breaking down that barrier of entry, making it so you don't have to be, a coding wizard to get started.
Right. And speaking of getting started, one of the things I was worried about when I first heard about Cursor was that it was going to be this whole thing to switch over. You know how it is when you're used to a certain editor, you've got your whole set.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Your extensions, your key bindings, everything's just the way you like it. It's tough to switch.
Exactly. But Cursor actually makes it really easy to transition from other popular editors like VS Code. You can import all your settings, your extensions, everything, so you don't have to relearn everything from scratch.
It's like they were thinking ahead about all the things that would stop people from even trying it out. They're like, nope, we're making this as painless as possible.
Yeah, for sure. They want to make it as easy as possible for people to jump in and see what it can do.
Okay. So we've talked about the tech. Let's talk about the impact, because we've seen some pretty bold statements from some big names in the industry.
Yeah, I saw that quote from the Prisma founder, there's no going back.
There is no going back, and that's a strong statement.
It really is.
What do you think he meant by that?
Well, I think he's getting at the idea that this is a fundamental shift in how we think about coding. It's not just a new tool, it's a new paradigm.
It's like the difference between, I don't know, like writing a letter by hand versus using a word processor. It changes everything.
And I think that's what's so exciting about this moment, right? We're seeing the very beginning of what AI can do in the realm of coding, and it's already pretty mind-blowing. But the real question is, where do we go from here?
Right. What does this mean for the future of software development?
Exactly. I mean, imagine a world where writing code is less about syntax and more about logic and problem solving, where developers can focus on the big picture, on the creative aspects of building software, and leave the more tedious tasks to AI.
It's like right now, coding can sometimes feel like you're trying to speak a foreign language perfectly, right? You're so worried about getting the grammar exactly right that you forget what you're even trying to say in the first place.
Yes. And I think that's what Cursor and these other AI tools have the potential to change. They can free us from the tyranny of syntax, allowing us to focus on the higher level aspects of software development.
That's incredible. And I imagine this also has huge implications for how we teach coding, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about how much easier it would be to learn to code if you didn't have to memorize all the intricacies of a particular language's syntax right off the bat.
Yeah.
If you could just start by expressing your ideas in a way that felt natural and let the AI handle the translation.
It's like learning to write before you learn to type.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that could open up the world of coding to a much wider range of people, which is incredibly exciting.
It democratizes the whole thing in a way.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about what Cursor is, how it works, its potential impact. But before we wrap up, I want to touch on one last thing,
Okay.
and that's security and privacy. Because obviously, with any AI tool, especially one that has access to your code base, these are major concerns.
Right. And to be honest, that was one of my first thoughts when I heard about Cursor. But they've actually gone to great lengths to address these concerns. For example, Cursor has a privacy mode that ensures your code never leaves your machine.
Okay, so even if you don't want your code going out to some server somewhere, you can still use Cursor and benefit from all its features locally.
Exactly. And they've also obtained SOC 2 certification, which is a really rigorous security audit. So they're taking security and privacy very seriously.
That's good to hear, because I think those concerns are going to be top of mind for a lot of people, especially those
Right.
working on sensitive projects.
For sure. And it's important to remember that AI is still in its early stages, and there are always going to be new challenges and concerns that arise as these technologies evolve.
Right, this is just the beginning.
Exactly. And that's what makes this such an exciting time to be involved in the world of software development.
Absolutely. Okay, so for all of you listening out there, whether you're a seasoned developer or just starting out, I think the takeaway here is clear. AI is changing the game. And Cursor is a prime example of how these new technologies have the potential to revolutionize the way we code.
It's a glimpse into the future of coding, and it's a future that's full of possibilities.
So the question for you is, how will you adapt? How will you evolve your skills to thrive in this new era of AI-powered development? That's something for all of us to ponder as we dive deeper into this exciting new world.